Hi everybody, and we're on number 5 with a very, very, very special guest. And the reason we have this special guest is because the two of us kind of grew up in the same kind of fashion. I had a very famous musical family, which people always were, oh, you've got to tell us about that family. And she grew up, and her father was Arthur Kennedy, and her mother was, I'm not sure what her mother's name was, but they were all very well-known movie people and Broadway people, and worked with all the Kazan and Arthur Miller and everything else. And one time, I was working with Angelica Houston, and I said, oh, your grandfather, he was so wonderful. And she said, I never met him. And I wondered if that was a way of people leaving her alone about her family. So now I'm going to turn it over to Laurie Kennedy, who is the wonderful Laurie Kennedy, and she's an actress and everything else, and we'll discuss what it feels like to be in a family like that, where you thought that everybody grew up this way, and people said, oh. So, Laurie, did that happen to you?
In some respects, absolutely. I met a lot of very fascinating people. I mean, my mother was a wonderful hostess, and she loved to entertain, and so people were constantly coming to the house when we lived in California, and then again when we lived in Connecticut. So I was constantly meeting fascinating people.
Did you meet some, like for instance, Kazan or people like that? I mean, I know that he was doing things, and whether you would be considered for any of that?
I auditioned once for Kazan because of my connection with my father and Kazan out in California. One of the movies he did with De Niro, Fitzgerald, I think it was F. Scott Fitzgerald movie. I didn't get the role, but it was fun auditioning with him.
Yeah, I auditioned with him for, I had worked with Harold Pinter, and he was going to be doing King Lear, and so I wrote a letter to Pinter and I said, can you get me an audition? And he said yes. So I don't know how it happened, but as we're talking, I filled up with emotion and tears, and he said, you're probably a very good actress. And I said, yes, I am. And then he had a telephone call. And I went, what did that happen? How did that? And that was the only experience I had with him. But that was way after he had named names.
In 1952, Kazan was called upon HUAC in regard to his affiliation with the U.S. Communist Party, which he was a member of for only 18 months in the mid-1930s.
The head of 20th Century Fox said, you better name names, or else you're never going to work in Hollywood again.
His career at risk? Ultimately, Kazan gave to the committee the names of 8 fellow members of the Communist Party, all former colleagues of his at the group theater. Actors and spouses Phoebe Brand and Morris Karnofsky, actor Tony Kraber, actor Ted Wellman, actor Louis Leverett, who had starred in Kazan's Gentleman's Agreement, playwright Clifford Ordetz, who had made a deal with Kazan that they would name each other in their testimonies, and gave to the committee the names of the same individuals Kazan did, but unlike Kazan, suffered irreparable damage to his career. Actress Paula Strasberg, the wife of Lee Strasberg, whom Kazan had stated was like a father to him during his group theater days, and actor J. Edward Bromberg, who had been blacklisted the year before Kazan's testimony after refusing to cooperate with the committee, resulting in him suffering from a tremendous amount of turmoil, which may have contributed to his fatal heart attack in December of 1951.
Now, what did your father think of that?
He was not at all happy, but he was not at all happy when Miller wrote After the Fall about Marilyn Monroe. He thought that was a low blow, and he more or less, I think, disappointed Robert Whitehead and Arthur Miller, and probably he moved away from that whole group. But Miller kept using him in one of his later plays, The Price. He cast my father again.
And he played the
doctor.
The doctor, yeah. I saw that with other people, but I do know, I did see your father playing What's
Crucible,
No, the son in
All My Sons,
no, the other one.
Death of a
Death of
Salesman.
a Salesman. Thank you. And he was.
Yeah, he got a Tony Award for that.
He was the best of all of them, as far as I'm concerned. He was like, your father. And your father, anyway, was one of my turn-ons. I love Irishmen.
Well, he was one of those.
Oh, God, he was gorgeous. But did people bother you about, please tell me about Hollywood. Oh, you knew a lot of people in Hollywood. Blah, 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 blah.
Well, there were a number. I mean, Mickey Rooney came by once and gave my brother a bunch of records because he heard that my brother loved records, jazz records, and he got a big Spiderback, and he got all these wonderful 78s. Dana Andrews, Burl Ives.
Oh, Pearl Ives, my goodness. Was he in it? Your father was anything with him?
No, but they knew each other because when my father went out west, he started a theater group. Marilyn Monroe was in it, and all these movie actors who had wanted to do more stage. And one of the funny stories was Mildred Dunning was in it.
Oh.
And she had always wanted to do sex roles where, and so she did something on the beach with a lot of Mexican men. It was a cause for great amusement. She was a lifelong friend of my
One of the
father's.
great ladies, one of
Yes.
the great ladies.
Yeah.
I went to Spoleto 100 years ago.
So did my father. With her?
Yes.
Was it, what production did you do?
I did.
Greek
Molly,
something.
no, Molly Kazan had written something, and I did it for a minute, and then also there was the play that Tennessee Williams wrote with Hermione Badley, but anyway, something weird, and I just remember that he wasn't there. Your father wasn't there.
He did something in Spoleto with Millie. He did some Greek play. I think he played Hector in one of those kind of roles. Because Millie wanted to do something that was tragic and Greek. And
She was the most amazing. There's a story about Millie Dunnick, which I love, is she wanted to audition for Big Mama. And she comes out, and Tennessee woman said, Millie, darling, you're just too small, honey. I mean, I love you, honey, but just too small. So she goes to the costume company, and she gets a fat suit. I mean, this is true. She gets a fat suit, and she comes back, and he said, oh, my God, you can have the role.
The same thing happened to her with Death of a Salesman. Because Anne kept saying, you're not right for this woman. You're not right. You're too elegant. You're too upscale with your vocal. She had a wonderful voice.
I know.
And she kept coming back. How about this? I mean, she was a real fighter.
Oh my, and she did that last scene you could die from.
Yeah.
Forgive me, Willie. I can't cry. I don't know what it is, but I can't cry. It just seems to me that you're away on another trip. I keep expecting you. Willie, why did you do it? I search and I search and I search, and I can't understand it. I made the last payment on the house today. Nay, dear, and there'll be nobody home. We're free and clear.
It makes me cry now. What's wonderful about it is that she didn't play the sadness. That's, to me, the famous, when people say, when you went to the actor's studio, everybody had to cry. Oh, please God. And she didn't do that. And she was so moving. Such a wonderful lady.
Someone wrote about it. Tom Fontana wrote about this in an email to me about what she did with that last speech. I, of course, never saw this production. The only one I saw was Price. I didn't see Crucible.
Was
or
she
my
in the
son.
prize? No.
Kate Reed was.
Oh, that's right. And that you said that little story about it not
Oh.
being quite the best thing in the world.
Well, everybody, one character had a colostomy just before opening. Kate Reed was drinking too much. The director, Lou Grossbart, was fired, and Miller took over, and he was not a director. He kept saying, "You forgot the in that sentence. You got to add the." And my father changed the locks on his dressing room so that not Whitehead or Miller could come in and give him notes.
Oh my God!
It was a mess. It was a mess.
You just don't even realize the things that happen with some of the larger experiences. We think, oh, you should see that play. It's so great and everything. The poor person who's in it is going crazy because
It was quite a watershed for my father, I'm afraid.
Were you around when he was going through all of this?
Yes, that was one of the productions I did see, but it was so kind of fraught. Everybody was miserable. It just was falling apart. And the original man who played the brother left because he had never done stage. Jack, I can't remember his name. He dropped out in Pittsburgh before they got to New York. So that's when Pat Hingle came in and took over. But everything was changing every time you turned around. Something terrible was happening. So,
and when he came home, was he
was a little
vertumbled?
That's a good word.
He was vertumbled.
He was very vertumbled.
Well, the thing that I always experienced, because, I came from a very famous musical family, and everybody always wanted to imitate my Uncle Boris or
What was his last name?
Boris Goldovsky. He was on the Metropolitan, for 30 years he did the Metropolitan Opera intermissions, and he had his own opera company, and he taught opera, and he would say, "Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen." And so everybody wanted to show that they could do this. I got so tired of that. And it was wonderful. I thought that everybody in the world grew up with the famous artists coming in and coming out, like you probably thought everybody did with you, right?
Well, it was an interesting time because the Bolshevik Revolution, all these Russians came to America, and for some reason, my father fell in love with all this. So I remember as a kid, I'd go to bed, but at around 2:00 in the morning, I would wake up with the laughter. And there was just so much joy and laughter and screaming and yelling. What's happening? But he knew a lot of Russian.
Oh yeah, they just, that's exactly what they did. And when they would, I think I was talking, yes, the last episode was with my friend Jack, and we were talking because I had a one-person show that he directed.
Jack?
Kenndy.
Kenndy.
And we had a one-person show which was about me becoming an actress through this craziness. And I was saying that my family was a bit eccentric. And he said, a bit. But I had the same experience that you had, was they were always larger than life people.
And full of laughter and loved to drink and loved stories and they were wonderful, wonderful, joyous people. My memory is.
I thought everybody grew up that way. Somebody said, "Catherine, no, they didn't grow up that way."
No.
And you probably just thought, well, this is normal. I mean, you knew all the young kids in Hollywood probably.
Not all of them. We had an interesting, I was born in LA.
Mm-hmm.
We had a beautiful house on Mulholland Drive.
Mm-hmm.
But when Pop began doing stage, we moved to the east.
Did you keep that other house?
Yes, we'd go back and forth. And when I came west, I would be put ahead a grade. And when I moved east, I was put back a grade. So I felt very bright in the West Coast and very dumb in the East Coast. But my father usually drove with one of our dogs across country, and we would take the train. My brother,
I love those trains.
Oh, they were wonderful, wonderful. Or we'd drive. So I got a lot of exposure of both coasts, and then we sold California and moved to the East Coast after that.
Forever.
when I was around 6.
Oh, so it was a
All
long
that
time.
early life was back and forth, back and forth.
Oh, wow, that was really early. Yeah. Yeah, so you had mentioned something about Kirk Douglas.
And Mike Douglas he lived in Westport, and he was a grade ahead of me, and we dated briefly.
You did? At the
Briefly.
age of 6?
No, I was near 14, 13 or 14. And it turned out he was just trying to make his previous girlfriend jealous by dating me.
Charming.
Charming as always.
Yes, exactly. Well, to me, it's fascinating because when I did talk to Angelica, I wondered if she just said to me, well, I never met my grandfather, so that she would not have to get the fawning that you get when you know somebody like your father, or he was, her grandfather was, I adored him too.
He was a biggie.
Oh, he was very big and charming and funny and everything else. And I thought, how can you not know him? But I think she and her mother divorced her father, I think, before that. But why wouldn't she? Anyway, that's none of my business. And so people probably, the same thing with you. You probably had people who wanted to know you so that they could find out, to be your friend so that they could meet your daddy.
I had a feeling there was a period when directors would use me in the hopes of maybe my father would come on board at some point. People like Nico Sakharopoulos.
Oh!
He would have loved to have done Master Builder or something like that with my father and myself. It never came to be.
What did you do with him?
Nico's?
Yeah.
I was there 21 years. I did everything with Nico's. I did Iphigenia and Aulus. I did three sisters. So I've done 12 sisters in all.
Oh my
I
God!
did. I made a list once of the different roles I did with.
And you worked
Nikos.
with Olympia?
Olympia was my Olga twice.
Really?
Yes, she was a wonderful one.
And you played Irina?
Irina I played her 4 times.
Oh my God!
So got my workout with Chekhov in that one.
Oh, how your husband? Where did you meet him?
On an airplane.
Excuse me, I'm yelling and screaming here. On an airplane.
He had my seat. And I said, "Excuse me, sir, but that's my seat." And he said, "No, it's mine." And we showed each other and we both had the same seat. So he took the window and I took the aisle, and we talked all the way to California and exchanged numbers and started dating, and the rest is history.
No kidding. Very romantic.
Very romantic.
On the plane, and he was a writer.
He was a writer, wrote 9 novels, and after he died, I spent the next 2 years archiving everything he wrote, because he had copywritten everything. He did meow menus for cat lovers. He did all the games.
Meow menus?
I'll have to give you one. They're very funny. Anyway, all that has been copywritten, so everything went to Columbia University, where he had studied.
Oh.
So.
And I don't know if I should ask you this, but didn't he have, in the end of his life, a really tough ending?
He was Parkinsonian,
Yes.
so he had it for about 24 years. So it was a long haul, but it really didn't. In 94, he was diagnosed, and by 2000, it was beginning to really interfere with writing and with things that he wanted to do as a writer. But he found other ways to sort of circumvent writing.
Mm-hmm.
He listened to books on audio. He would talk into, recording and make notes to himself through recordings. So he kind of kept a pace, but it just gradually, it's a very debilitating. But as he said, it's the most fascinating disease because it's constantly challenging you in different ways. And he wrote a wonderful article for AARP called "Say Hello to My Condition," and it was really the ending. The last word he said, "Say hi to my condition. He's a little shy." It was just wonderful, wonderful stuff that he wrote.
Oh,
He was a wonderful writer.
I had to do the same thing, but I want everybody to have the opportunity of hearing what one can do when your husband or the person you live with gets very ill or knows that they're on the way to getting very ill, and what you have to do, which is really, I did it too, but I want Laurie to tell you because she did it more correctly than my guy did it. So go on.
Well, my husband was diagnosed with Parkinson's, and this was in 1994, and we read the books and were horrified.
Mm.
And so friends said, go to an elder care lawyer, someone who knows what happens as you get older. And we did that, and he said, get everything you can except your IRA out of your husband's name, out of your name, Keith, is sort of what they said. Leave the IRA because that has tax consequences. Anything else, change how it is. We had an apartment, so he quit-claimed me, or however it's called. I became the sole owner of the apartment. And that was the major thing. Other than that, I had to set up a bank account just for him. And then we went through the process of getting Medicaid, which is rather...
Medicaid, everybody.
Medicaid, which is rather arcane, but we did have a friend who was an elder care nurse. And so she helped us through all the ins and outs of getting Medicaid, which is a wonderful thing for middle-class people. It's not just for poverty people. I ended up having to pay monthly towards Medicaid based on my earnings. But Keith had totally free medication. All his medication was free.
Wow.
If ever he had a downturn, he would bump into Medicare, and these wonderful visiting nurses would come to the apartment and, deal with it for however long the issue lasted. Then he would go back into Medicaid, and you set up a trust. And basically his income would go into the trust. And anything that had his name on the bill, the rent, the phone, the cable, anything like that, insurance, you could bill those bills with his name on it and mine to the trust, and they would pay up to the amount that was allowed.
Mm-hmm.
And we survived the first couple of years. I was paying out of pocket for everything. It was horrifying. I thought, I'm not going to have any money by the time it ended. So we were very fortunate to have sort of how to help ourselves survive. And he lasted from 1994 to 2016.
Whoa!
So I'm very, very glad I did what I did.
You would have been on the street.
Yes.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
I had not that similar, but Huey, whoever the lawyer was, said that you really should get an irrevocable trust, because if anything happens, you could lose all of your money, so that if you have an irrevocable trust, then he can be put on Medicaid. Well, it turns out, thank God, the person who made the irrevocable trust did it very badly. So the new lawyer said, oh my God, he said, I can get you out of this thing as soon as you pass. I'm going to get you out of this right away so that you can use this one. But I mean, basically you had a revocable trust, and the thing that is so interesting is what you just said about getting an elder lawyer.
Elder care lawyer.
And this is so important because, our friends, some of our friends are not in good shape. And it's good for people to hear this. There are ways to make it comfortable for you who is well, through this terrible process of whatever that must have been awful.
Well, it was so long. I mean, what is it, 1994 to 2016? That's a lot.
Were your family, anybody alive from your family, your mom, dad?
My mother predeceased Keith. My father died in 1990, so he had passed before Keith was even ill with Parkinson's. So, he was healthy, writing, etc., etc. So his mother died in 1989. His father died when he was younger. So all the grown-ups had gone from our lives.
You do have a brother, don't you?
He died even before my mother and father died. He was schizophrenic. We dealt with that in varying degrees for many years. And then he disappeared in 1986, and we never found him. We searched, and we never found him.
Oh my, we have very interesting lives, all of us, the loss of
Older brother.
And
a brilliant kid. I mean, it was one of those sad. Schizophrenia is a horrible disease.
here we are, two ladies of a certain age. I have no idea how old you are. You don't have to say. And we're living interesting, fabulous lives. Oh, we should say, I forgot to say this one thing. Tell about is it a puma?
Ocelot.
Ocelot. This is an ocelot. Tell your story with the ocelots, because no wonder you have lots of cats.
Yes, I now am an animal activist, and I save stray cats, and I get them fixed, but I don't re-release them. The whole thing is TNR. I think it's the TNR: trap, neuter, and release. I don't re-release them. I keep them.
How many do you have?
I have 6 right now.
Whoa! What do you do about your
The claws, I
furniture?
tip them.
The
The furniture, it's all covered with towels and
good.
everything's covered.
Because my famous aunt, who was a pianist, she had, in her later part of her life, the most beautiful furniture, French, everything else. She got 3 cats, and you walked in and you went, "Oh, that chair, is that a chair? What is that?" I mean, it was so awful.
Yeah, they can ruin a whole.
But tell about the
ocelot. My mother and father loved animals as I did, and they met an ocelot born in captivity, and my mother just was. When they're born in captivity, they aren't necessarily wild. They're just big. And she said, "Oh, I want one, and they bought one that had been born in captivity. It died before delivery. And the store owner said, 'We have one coming from Peru. Do you want it?' And she said, 'Yes.' And in this wooden crate came this little thing that fit into my hand.
Really?
It was a little baby. And we put it in the guest room. And it immediately went under a chest of drawers. And my mother and father were going out that night. And I remember I had a crinoline skirt. And it was white with little flowers all over. And my mother said, 'Laurie, do not go into that room. I don't want anything to happen. Let him just be alone.' As soon as they were at the door, I went into the room, pulled this poor creature out from under, and held him, and he shat all over my skirt, which of course gave me away in a minute. And it bonded with me because I was so obsessed with getting to know this creature. I spent every waking hour with it, and it used to sleep around my neck.
How big did it become?
It was a large cat with a tail, so it became quite large. We created he was in my bedroom, but as he urinated, he would raise his tail, and the wood in my bedroom began to turn yellow. It got higher and higher. And my mother said, "We've got to move him out to the barn, and we'll create a heated room for him and everything," which is what we eventually did. But as I grew older, other things began to take over my interest. And my mother found Captain Kangaroo in Mount Kisco, his animal trainer or something. And one summer we couldn't bring him with us. There wasn't room for this ocelot. So we went to Captain Kangaroo. And during that summer, my mother said they had a fire and everyone died. I think she did that to cut me off from even thinking about a future with Smerdley.
His name was Smerdley?
Smerdley.
Where did that come from?
My brother named him Smerdley. To this day, I don't think Smerdley really died in the fire. I think my mother just had to stop the relationship from going any further. She had found a home for him. It was, acceptable. There was a cheetah there. There was a cheetah, a monkey, and, other wildlife. He used to bring these wildlife on Captain Kangaroo for the kids to meet. So I hope Smerdley didn't have that.
I mean, it's so wonderful. I can see this whole thing happening. Oh, God, you are so funny. And that's why you have 27 cats in your apartment. No. Six.
My latest is called Jolly Jumbuck. You know the song Waltzing Matilda?
Yes.
Where is that Jolly Jumbuck you've got in your tucker bag? Well, that's his name, is Jolly Jumbuck. And he's got a little feral streak in him. He goes to bite, and I say no, and he stops. He hasn't bitten me, he hasn't scratched me, but he has a little edge to him, which is rather winning. Reminds me of Smerdley.
What about the other ones?
They haven't met yet. I have to keep them separate. I haven't merged them yet.
We're talking about an actress. Does she want to have a job? No, she doesn't want to have a job. She wants to have Smerdley meet Burbly. It's wonderful, though, because I always, when I went to the gorillas, I fell in love. If I could have brought a gorilla home, I probably would have. I mean, it was.
Where did you meet them?
In Uganda. I went to Uganda, and I did the trek twice. And it was, to me, the most extraordinary experience when you're there and you're looking at a huge silverback and he's looking at you. You'd like to say, "Here I am, baby." Well, I am telling you, this has been so much fun because we haven't talked about the fact that, which I wanted to talk about, which was the two of us are actresses who should be getting work, but you have kind of decided not to do anything.
I don't do Zoom anymore.
No,
I do Zoom. I won't do selfies. There's something. I just feel like I want the interaction with a casting person.
So does everybody.
I like having, they say, try it this way, do this. And sometimes you get the right thing and you get the job. I got nothing no feedback, and I got tired of it. It was depressing because I wasn't booking, and I didn't know why.
Me either. That's the same thing.
I just got depressed by it. So I just said, I'll do Zoom, but I will not do self.
It's really something because I even called my agent. I said, "Is there something else I should be doing?" She never answered me. And she always says that my auditions are
I'm sure
really
they're wonderful.
Good. Yeah.
I don't know. I at this point, they can see 50 times the number of people that they used to see. And it sometimes just knocks the person who has probably more experience out of the running because, that's an interesting look, or that's an interesting...
Yeah, and the thing now that we're against every different kind of person, and I don't think that's a bad thing to be, but I get irritated when a play, which should not be having certain people in it,
I hear you.
has people in. Anyway, I'm not going to go into that because you're going to know what I'm talking about, and I think I almost went through a whole thing about that. And it's like everything else that when I come to the end of these things with somebody, I wanted to continue because it's so interesting. We are interesting ladies, and we're fascinating to know. And why are writers not writing more about these fascinating ladies? I mean,
we got to live in England. That's where we should go.
That's exactly what I say every time. All of those older ladies are working. So we just have to keep figuring it out. And I don't know how to figure it out, but this part is fun. And I hope you've all enjoyed Laurie and have to find out more about her animals. But I think it's wonderful that we can talk about all of the things we can talk about at our age and come up with a good feeling. So this is a very special thing for me, and thank you very much for coming along with us.
And thank you for asking me to come along with
Us.
all of you. Yes.
It's wonderful, isn't it?